welcome back to the Witching Hour. I'm Haley Fouch, and as you may notice, Miss Perry is out today, traveling the world with all her glamour. So I have the lovely Mr. Donato joining me today.
Thank you for having me back, and I will do my best to fill in for Perry.
You'll do wonderful. You're becoming like our go-to. One of us is out of town.
I was going to say, I like
Donato.
having this rotation and where I get one of you guys at all times, so
Yeah.
I'm okay with this.
Yay. And we got fun stuff to talk about today.
Did we?
I think we did.
Okay.
Well, we'll see.
Just checking. I was
We'll
like,
see. Not anything about it.
it could be not that fun at the same time, but we'll see.
True. We got the new Candyman trailer, got a little bit of fun news.
Yep.
And of course, like the horror topic of the week, The Invisible Man. We're going to give you some non-spoiler thoughts on it real quick since, we have a full review up on the channel, but Donato and I have not shared our thoughts, so we're going to give you those. But then we're going to throw up a big spoiler warning, and we're gonna talk about it. We're going to talk about that film.
Yeah. A lot to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about.
There's a lot
I'm
to talk
excited
about,
it.
especially at that ending that we'll get to eventually.
Exactly. But for now, you're safe. Spoilers are safely stowed away, and we're going to talk about the Candyman trailer. So hit me with your thoughts. What's your first reactions?
I am very into everything it is laying down. I'm hoping I'm not hyping it up too much in my head, but what I like about it is we've seen a trailer that doesn't exactly paint what the film is. Yeah. I don't know whether he's an imitator. I don't know whether it's a possession film. I don't know how Tony Todd's going to play in. Maybe it's going to be just the narration. Maybe it's going to be that reflection that our main character sees in the mirror or a car window or stuff like that. So I haven't quite figured out what they've done and how they're going to do a continuation, and that makes me very excited.
I like that too, and I'm so glad that, I think that one of the initial reactions was you can't replace Tony Todd, and you hear that a lot with these remakes, but really he's one of the most difficult to replace with that voice and that presence, and he's so theatrically trained and commanding. So we don't know what they're doing, but it does seem that they found a way to keep him involved in the character to some extent, and that means a lot.
I mean, I just watched the Nightmare on Elm Street remake yesterday. That's a perfect point because you talk about these horror icons that can't really be replaced, and the actor is so tied to the character.
Yeah.
And obviously Robert Englund playing Freddy, that's a big one. We saw how that turned out when they went with Jackie Earle Haley, who didn't really do a terrible job himself. But what he was given and how the film turned out, you could just tell, like, even with England, that would have been a better film. It didn't feel like Freddy. So, exactly, Candyman, a huge thing. That's Tony Todd. But again, as you've said, now you have this continuation and this generational gap that actually fits in with the story, and they found a way to do that, I think.
We think.
Exactly. This is all we think. We don't, no spoilers here, obviously, because we haven't seen the film, so we can't spoil anything, and these is all speculation.
Jackie Earle Haley really did his best, and I think his performance is the best thing going for that film. But was that your first time watching it?
Yeah, it was.
Ooh.
I avoided that. That was I was still a wee little
Peanut.
lad who wasn't writing about horror movies and stuff like that.
Okay.
I need an adult.
Yeah.
I don't know if the choices they made were the right ones in that film. Also, just dreadfully boring.
Such a bummer of a movie. And I think I saw you say this on Twitter, like, what a cast to squander.
Like, you look
ensemble
through it, and it's the Twilight thing, where it's like all these young actors who you look back now and like, wow, they went on to do great things. And I mean, Nightmare was kind of the same thing. Like, you're talking about like Rooney Mara. I mean, Kellen Lutz, like, is even one of the lower names on the list.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, again, just we don't need to talk about Nightmare. Like,
I'm
there's
just,
no reason to talk about it.
That you just saw it for the first time.
Again, I avoided it. I wanted nothing to
bummer.
do with it, and then it hit Netflix, and it was one of those things where I'm like, I'm working from home. Like, I got the time to kill. And it really did kill time. It just made time seem like forever. It destroyed time.
That was one that I was like, I will never watch this again. I hate it so much. And I never say I hate movies, but I truly dislike that film. And it's maybe my favorite, second favorite horror franchise. I don't know. Wes Craven does it for me. Scream or that. Yeah. But I had to do a ranking list a few years ago for the site, so I had to rewatch it. And just agony, man. Agony.
The makeup looks so bad.
So bad.
He doesn't have a neck. Freddy without a freaking neck.
It's a bummer.
But anyway, Candyman.
Candyman.
We were talking about Candyman.
It's hopefully not going to be like that.
I don't think it will.
It
Also,
really,
those reds.
Those
reds.
I was going to say it looks like Nia DaCosta's directing the hell out of it.
Again, Nia DaCosta.
Yes.
Nia DaCosta.
Jordan Peele produced and co-wrote. Nia DaCosta directed.
I get the SEO need. I get it.
Totally.
But at least say produced by in the headline. Like I'm getting a little whatever about these headlines that are like Jordan Peele's Candyman.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. So that's par for the course. Like
this
happens a lot. If Quentin Tarantino produces something, they're going to say that. If Guillermo produces something, they're going to say that. It does. I do think there's like a slightly different element of it because it is a woman of color directing, and we really need to like not erase that fact and hold it up a little bit because it doesn't happen in horror very often.
And it's like, I guess the argument is like, we have a man of color. That's Jordan Peele. But again, that's the biggest thing here. And I think Ashley Blackwell said yesterday, this is the first time a woman of color is directing a mainstream big budget horror, like not big budget, but like big studio horror film. Like that needs to be celebrated.
Yeah. Film Twitter stepped in pretty quickly.
Yeah, 100%. Every single person. I love the people that were doing Nia DaCosta 5 times. And then she retweeted one time and she's like, it worked. Yeah. And I was like, you win. You win the internet for the day.
I think
Congratulations.
That was Sabina's tweet too. Which
yes, that was Sabina's. You are right.
Lovely. And I'm very excited to see what she does with it. Yes, the Reds and your shirt is, the brand remains so strong.
Remains on strong. That's it.
The Maddie D brand
on
lives.
fleek.
Yeah. Oh no.
I may be writing about the Reds too.
Oh, of course you are.
I am.
Of course. I also, did you watch Watchmen? You didn't.
I did not. I did not watch the Watchmen show.
Mr. Yahya Abdul
Yes.
the second has quite a role in that show that's impossible to talk about without spoiling the series, but he has to.
I know the role.
Okay.
I'm on Twitter. I know.
Oh yeah, people weren't.
Yeah,
shy.
no, they were
That's
not
right.
shy
they
about
just
that.
Blasted that everywhere. Dicks everywhere.
So a lot of dick for not seeing the show.
Yeah. That like having seen him have to take on a challenge like that and knowing what a challenge it will be to whatever sort of amalgam of the Candyman character he seems to be playing.
Yeah.
I feel like more reaffirmed that that's going to work out because once again, that was like an extremely iconic character with such a heavy load to bear for a performer of expectation and nostalgia and things like that. That not only is he like the perfect voice physicality to play that role, but I know that he can handle like the pressure of that kind of, we need you to do these things to live up to our expectations while also making it your own.
And I love the shot when he looks in the mirror and he just sees like Candyman staring back at him, and it's the whole, I am me, but Candyman is in the mirror and who is what. Yeah. And then you get those shots during the trailer where it's the victims and no one's there. Like there's an invisible force like attacking them, but then you also cut back and you see Candyman there later. So I don't know if this is a thing where he's going to be seeing one thing in his head and reality's the other, and they're going to try to play that as like some freaky combo. That's it.
So many mysteries.
Yeah, there's exactly. And that's why I said I love the trailer. There's no point in dissecting it because we're going to find out when the movie comes out. I'm kind of hoping, I don't think it'll happen, but I'm hoping because I'm going to South by and they haven't announced closing night yet.
And it's a real light genre lineup this year.
Very light.
Yeah,
compared to last year that had like Pet Sematary, Us, had like Curse of La Llorona.
And the year before had
Quiet Place, and that was the opener and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's been very light genre-wise, and the only other things are like A Quiet Place 2, but that's coming out literally like a week after, something like that, which is their MO. Their MO is usually we'll open with this film and it comes out like the week after.
But that wouldn't make a good surprise, right?
No, not at all. I think that's why I don't think it'll be A Quiet Place 2 anymore. But yeah, I'm fingers crossed somehow that it is.
That'd be amazing.
Candyman.
I also, it is definitely got that Jordan Peele touch in the writing of it has a lot to say. Very, the trailer is not subtle with like who would do that. 5 white women would do that.
Yep.
The gentrification of the neighborhood, all of that is giving it layers that for many, many years, like film historians and horror writers have been like, this was a movie that exploited Black trauma for white characters. So I'm very excited to see that turned around in the way that it maybe should have always been. And, credit to Clive Barker, who is, of course, a white man and wrote a wonderful story.
And Bernard Rose, too, again, a white director. And, they were able to do it. And, again, what I respect about Jordan Peele tremendously, and I wrote about this, is he's not, he makes Get Out and he becomes that voice and he becomes kind of the beacon for a turning point in horror, and especially like people of color and stuff like that in horror. And he hasn't taken that and run by himself. He has created a production company, and he is giving his voice, and he is giving that same voice and urgency to as many directors and creators as he can. And that's really exciting. That's especially what I love about Candyman, because, yeah, he could have directed this easily. He could have stepped in and been like, yeah, no, I'll take this. This is fine. But no, he's chosen to step back and say, like, let's get some more people doing this.
We talk about that a lot in here, like the filmmakers who make it a point to lift people up and share the love, and you genuinely love to see it.
Always.
My brain just did a little leapsy because, he did produce and host the new Twilight Zone, and we have the new Amazing Stories. And along the lines of the, like, crediting producers in the headlines, I can't imagine how many people are going to watch Amazing Story based on all the headlines that are like Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories and be like, wait, he didn't direct this shit.
No, he did not.
Yeah.
You'll find out very quickly he did not direct this shit.
Side note, but I am interested. Okay, side tangent, but we take for granted that so many people think of film and media the way that we do because we're so immersed in it, and that's simply not the fact. Perry and I recently discussed the Spiral trailer, and I realized seeing it in the theater last night, what I hadn't noticed before, because, again, we're so immersed and we know exactly what that is. If you don't know that movie's coming, if you don't know there's a Chris Rock Saw movie, you wouldn't know for most of that trailer what the heck it is. It has to sell itself on its own merit. And I was sitting in the theater last night wondering, like, how many of these people sitting around me understand what this is going to be by the end of the trailer, which I hadn't realized before. And that's just a side note about how we need to consider that, like, most people don't think about movies the way we do.
Yeah, no, or as often as we do, or keep up with the news like we do. I mean, we are a special breed.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why, I looked at a lot of the tweets yesterday being like, I know Nia DaCosta is directing this. Like, do we really need to belabor this and keep hitting that point home? And then I saw the other tweets that made me realize, yeah, we do. Again, because the general public, if they start seeing things positioned like Jordan Peele's Candyman, that's exactly what they're going to think, because they are not immersed in this like we are. Like, we've known about this for how long on the casting and, all the pulling together.
Speculating.
Exactly. So we've been doing this for way longer than people even knew the film was a thing. Yeah, that's important. I think it's important that we get in our own heads. We're film critics. We live this world. We breathe it. But not everyone is obsessed and crazy as we are.
I will never forget. This was, like, deep into the MCU. Low-key was for sure a thing.
Okay.
And I was, at the time, a manager at a hair salon, and I mentioned something about Tom Hiddleston, and no one who worked there knew who he was at all. And that was a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah, no, we are a special kind of person.
I mean, and he was legit famous by that point, too. It wasn't like the first Thor film. We're talking, like, post-Avengers.
Yeah.
And it was, I was like, all right, I'll remember this when I write.
Well, that was even, like, I mean, how much do we know about The Hunt, and how much do we know about all the marketing behind that and the way that it got buried? And, like, we know that whole story. And yet I saw it last night, and I went to one of my friends, like, they asked me to do something. I'm like, I can't. I'm actually going to see The Hunt. And they were just like, what are you talking about? What is The Hunt? And I'm just, like, I sat there going, like, oh, my God, there is a world where people don't know anything about this film and somehow avoided all of that.
So that's interesting, because that was also one of the trailers that played last night.
Okay.
And you know how the new trailer is like the most talked about movie of the year, blah, 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 blah. There's very much a sense in the theater of people, again, I told you before, I think that they were pretty vocal in that auditorium. They were like, what? And then at the end of the trailer, I think maybe because it had hyped itself up so much, two different groups. There was a group of young women and a group of young men behind me. They both at the same time go, I don't know. Which was, I was like, I don't know. That's like, maybe you shouldn't think that everyone, that one did get on a national scale.
It did. I mean, yeah, this is true. It got the bump that it
cart ahead
needed.
That horse. Yeah.
No, I know. Yeah. And I mean, they really went full force into that. I mean, I actually question if the movie got pulled or if they looked at the marketing that they could go with and said, wow, we have an opportunity here. Let's take it.
Oh, that's very interesting.
I don't know. Obviously,
right,
I'm not saying anything,
no,
but
speculation.
Because after watching the film, I'm like, what were they worried about? It,
Probably the actual president of the United States turning it into a political factor.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's a political film.
Anyway, yeah, exactly.
You got to see it last night, and you can't review, but you can give like social style thoughts. So let's
social style thoughts.
Hear about it.
Betty Gilpin. I just want more of whatever she's doing in this movie.
Nice.
Freaking amazing. It is thankfully the movie that I wanted it to be, in that it's kind of just like scorched earth satire. There is no taking sides. If you live in America, there will be at least 20 times you look and laugh at yourself, and it's meant to be laughed at. That's the biggest thing. This is not, it is a political film, but it's not trying to drive home a soapbox message. It is just laughing at all of us at the same time. And I really like that. It's pitch black. It's gruesome. There's some really, really good effects and kills. And that is where, like, that's all I can really say about it. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I'm into it. I never watched Lost, so I missed the part where everyone was mad at him. I love Damon Lindelof's writing, and can't wait to see what he... You know, we saw the serious version of what he thinks about today's America in Watchmen. I'd like to see the satire version now.
Yeah, the satire version is... If you've been on Twitter, you know the satire version.
Oh, and that man does not like Twitter.
No, he doesn't.
Fair enough.
Trust me, no, he does not.
Who would? And not to erase Nick Hughes, who co-wrote the film. But I know less about his work, so
yes, no,
I don't have strong
exactly.
opinions
Yeah,
on
no,
that.
the Lindelof name takes over.
Totally.
It just happens.
These names, they get well known and they do take over.
We're SEOing ourselves on a podcast.
Oh God, I can't. I'll go into a whole side rant about algorithmic determinism and how we're all slaves
that's
to
for
the machine.
that's for a different podcast.
I know.
We're on the horror podcast right now, not the data
day,
analytics.
There'll be like a really good tech horror where I can fully do my rant about why I'm like so terrified of algorithms.
Countdown.
Today's not that day.
About Countdown. I mean, it's not good. I'm just kidding.
That wasn't a movie about
no,
algorithms.
that wasn't. No, that was about apps and data. And all right,
was it even data? Was it really about data?
It wasn't. It was about nothing.
It was about nothing. I didn't hate that movie as much as a lot of people did.
Oh, I did.
It didn't excel at what it tried to do.
I'll say I hated it. Did not like it.
I try to reserve the H word for things like the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street because it's truly
That's
appalling
fair.
work.
I'm happy The Hunt is what it is because I just saw Fantasy Island before that, and it was a nice little Blumhouse bump.
Yes.
And yeah, I needed that.
Yeah.
I needed that.
They needed it too.
Yeah.
Well, no, and they're gonna do with that and
money's
Invisible
gonna be
Man.
fine.
This is gonna their year's coming back around.
There was like a tweet that I'm curious to see what Invisible Man makes.
Yeah.
Because someone said the last 3 attempts at creating a dark universe. So you look at that Mummy, Dracula Untold, and I think The Wolfman. They all had big studio budgets, and they all topped out at 30 million. 2 of them only did about 20 million. I think Wolfman or maybe Cruise with The Mummy got like 30. But if The Invisible Man can get close to that or anywhere close to that on a Blumhouse budget, that's going to be such a huge success for Universal. It's going to be crazy.
I think it will. You never know. Like my screening last night wasn't jam packed, but for a Thursday at 7 on an original horror film. I know it's not original; it's IP. But like,
did 1.6 I think came out,
okay,
so it did 1.6 last night.
And mine wasn't full, but I also, just as a side note, it's really good to like step away from the industry screenings and just be like, oh, these are my people. The people who come at Thursday at 7 to see the new horror movie, it like touched my heart a little bit. And I would say it was like half full, which I think is pretty good for a movie on this level. That's, it's not a sequel to a horror film that already did really well. And as you said, the last few attempts at bringing back the classic monsters really didn't do so well. And the crowd, aside from the teenage girls who just super weren't feeling it and left before it gets really good, they bounced.
Totally fine. That honestly, the theater's better for that.
100%. Everyone else was in it. We'll get to that in a sec.
Right.
One last thing we wanted to hit in the news, just as a little funsies, a little fun update. Thank you for flagging this. Mr. Chris Evans joining. Are you kidding me?
Is it confirmed? I just want to make sure.
Is it confirmed? That's a really great point. I've
I
been
know
traveling the last few days, so I just saw the tweets.
Yeah, I want to do the same thing as you. I know it was talked about. I know it was put out there, and he even tweeted it. He tweeted about it himself. So I mean,
okay, he's in talks.
Exactly, in talks. But again, he's tweeting it. He's putting a little tooth emoji. I think he like did the news and he quote tweeted with a tooth emoji. So
And I believe sorry, I did not say what we're talking about. Chris Evans in talks to join Little Shop of Horrors remake.
Boop, boop, boop.
He had mentioned something about it, like unrelated, I think, a while ago in an interview, because he's like a super big theater nerd.
Yeah.
And I love that for him. I mean, okay. I actually have a couple mixed thoughts on that.
Well, I was gonna say, does he 100% fit the character?
No,
he doesn't. That's the biggest thing, right?
The character.
Exactly.
But this is not new. This is like if you are a theater nerd, the hotification of Seymour is something that's talked about a lot.
Okay.
They do this on Broadway a lot. He's no longer played by nerd types. He's played by strapping, beautiful men with glasses on. So, like, it's not Chris Evans' fault.
No, not at all. And I mean, it's
nothing is Chris Evans' fault.
also you're getting people in seats. I mean, that's the other thing too. You know, how are we going to get people to turn out for a Little Shop of Horrors remake? Well, let's get a cast that absolutely kills it and names that they're known for. And you know, on Evans's trajectory at this point, now post MCU, let him get weird, you know, like let him have these kind of roles and let him kind of feel himself in the way that maybe like Elijah Wood did, where he did Lord of the Rings and now he's become like a genre kid or genre man. You know, he's like well into doing stuff like Come to Daddy and all these crazy horror movies. So I'm into Evans taking that swing because early Evans, even going back to like Scott Pilgrim, I mean, he's not playing a good guy there. Like, Lucas Lee
is so fun.
And he's so great at it. That's why. I want to see more of that, Evans.
I agree, and I was talking about this with someone recently, but he needs to stay away from Captain America type roles because you can't help but see him when he plays the leading man type as that character. He has a new show coming up called Defending Jacob that I saw the first 2 episodes of and am deeply under embargo and cannot give any thoughts on the show itself. But I will say it's hard to see him play this man fighting for something he really believes in and not have your mind go to that direction. Whereas make him an asshole, do Knives Out, and then he owns it entirely. He's really good at playing assholes.
And I'm sure he's bored with playing the other part. And not bored, maybe that's not the right word, but you've done this character, the wholesome, the all-American hero for so long.
Yes.
As an actor, you got to be able to want to do it. It's Daniel Craig. It's him now getting to do just like Knives Out, you know? He's been Bond for so long. It's like, yeah, let me go do Logan Lucky. Let me go do Knives Out. And
Give me a Southern accent.
And people even like interviewing him, I forget who I was talking to, but they were kind of like at a junket for Knives Out. And they were like, I've interviewed Craig a lot. And sorry, not me. This is the person saying that. They're like, I've interviewed Craig a lot, and he's usually quieter and more serious. And, you know, it's a whatever interview. And they were like, Knives Out, he was a blast. He had energy. He was colorful. And they were like, I think him getting away from Bond is going to be really good for him.
I can see that. Absolutely. You get tired. Evans has been vocal about how tired he was in the grind. And it's a grind. Like,
100%.
A lot.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, workload, press load.
Yeah, the press load especially.
Okay, so I don't want to run out of time.
Yeah, no, go.
It's way too easy for us to talk for really long. I'm like, holy shit, it's
been
25 minutes.
Move on.
Let's talk about Invisible Man. We're going to do 2 things here. We're going to give our quick non-spoilers thoughts, and then my dear friend here put together a lovely list curated that he asked a bunch of film writers to sort of give their thoughts on who should direct future adaptations of the classic monsters should Invisible Man do well, which I think it will. And we're going to look at that, see if we still feel the same way. I genuinely don't even remember who I picked, so this should be fun.
I looked it over a little bit just to see where we all stood, and especially, like, you know, Invisible Man was one of them. So it was,
it was?
I think it was.
Oh, man, this has been so...
pretty sure.
Why does it feel like February of 2019 was 6 years ago?
Because it was. Because that's how time works.
That's when this was published. All right, real quick, give me your thoughts, your thinky thoughts.
I liked it. I liked it a good amount. I can't say I 100% loved it. My biggest issues were more along the lines of it's hard to talk about and not sound bad in a little way. Like, I'm obviously, like, this story is important. Yeah. But it's also handled in the way that we've kind of seen before, minus the Invisible Man angle. I think what Elizabeth Moss's character goes through, some of them are just generic beats. Yeah. And I would have liked to see something a little different. Again, I'm just trying to be so not spoilery, and it's hard. I just don't think it goes for it in certain moments, and the traumatic beats we've seen kind of a bunch of times. I think that's the only thing holding it back, but then I got away from it a little bit, and the more I thought about the ending, the more I thought about how both Elizabeth Moss and Leigh Whannell weaponize blank space and make you afraid of what's right there, but you still can't even see it. Like, you're just blind to it, and it's in front of you. It just gets better and better the more I think about it, and that's a lot to digest.
It is so good on a technical accomplishment level.
Yes, absolutely that.
I'm kind of in the same boat, maybe for slightly different reasons, but it seems similar. Like,
yeah, I was just trying to I didn't want to say the wrong thing and
No.
invalidate it, because obviously it's a very valid story.
Totally.
Yeah.
It is a very valid story, and there's something inherently genius in using the Invisible Man to tell that story. It's the perfect character to tell a story about abuse and gaslighting and not believing women who are asking for help. It is, I think, in certain ways that we'll discuss when the spoiler load is off, not 100% coherent in how it approaches those things. And I know that Leigh Whannell did a lot of research and talked to a lot of women and survivors, and he did the legwork to make it fit. But I do also think that, like, from a woman's perspective, that might have played a little differently. That said, again, on a technical accomplishment level, you said it perfectly, the weaponizing of empty space. I don't think I've seen anyone pull that off the way this film does. I haven't had my jaw put on the ground at a particular moment since Hereditary in the way that it was. The scares are there, the tension is there, the performance is obviously there. It's Elizabeth Moss, whatever we know. And I'm very, very impressed by the film. I'm very impressed by seeing Leigh Whannell continue to establish his voice. I think that while I understand why it happened, because that was his right? Like, I think making his first film in an Insidious film didn't show us the best of him because he was required to play by James Wan's stylistic handbook. And in his last two films, we have seen what his stylistic handbook looks like, and it's so different and so cool. I'm very obsessed with the way he uses space, the way he uses motion. And I think that his career is just, for someone who already has such an exciting career, just like at the start of how exciting it's going to get.
And I mean, that the biggest thing for me was after Upgrade, his first film that he worked with Blumhouse on. Yeah. I was like, I don't know who I like more at this point, Leigh Whannell, the director, or Leigh Whannell, the writer. Because we all knew him as the writer to that point, and the actor randomly appearing and everything.
Yeah.
But his directing sense is so confident, and he is able to take these lower budget films and make. Obviously, they are not big studio films with big studio budgets. Blumhouse doesn't do that. But these films look better than the comparison points that you can take from any studio that gave it $20 million more dollars. Yes. And that is coming from a director who knows exactly what he wants. Again, the blank space and weaponizing that, and the production value on these films is through the roof.
Dude's got an eye.
Exactly.
Man.
He has an eye for exactly what he wants to make, and that's what's most impressive about him. I mean, he's made two films now that are very sci-fi heavy, and I would give him any sci-fi property at this point and let him run with it, because his eye for that kind of genre filmmaking, it's becoming unparalleled.
It's really, I can't even think of which franchise I'd most want to see him.
I mean, it's been said, but Escape from New York. Give him Escape from New York.
Really good. That'd be really good.
Because the other thing too, just really quickly, in Invisible Man, to me, he kind of took Paranormal Activity, and he took pieces of Upgrade, and he took the Invisible Man, and he put them together, and it was genius in the way he did that, because. I mean, some of those shots are straight from Paranormal.
Thank you. No one else. I haven't heard anyone else say this, and I was thinking it the whole freaking movie.
I put it in my review, and no one exactly. Yeah, no. That was Paranormal Activity. Like, one of the things I tweeted out the minute I saw it was, Leigh Whannell takes from so many Blumhouse films.
3 in particular.
Right, exactly. He takes specifically from Blumhouse, but he takes the best parts of them, and that's what became The Invisible Man. It's genius. It is genius in the way he did that, because that's the full modernization. That is the full, not only have you taken The Invisible Man and taken him into technology realms, because, yeah, sure, that's the new age way of doing a remake, but he actually took films that are relevant in the modern era, and he took films that have defined horror in the modern era. And I mean, maybe upgrade didn't define anything, but
Yet. It will.
it will.
I'll fight that
I
fight.
will fight you on that because it is what. Sorry, I won't fight you. I'll
You'll
fight with you
me.
on that.
Yeah.
Because even the action scenes, you're like, I've seen this in Upgrade, and now it's getting better somehow. Yeah, I'm very on board.
That's a very good point. He's embracing cinematic language from the last 2 decades in a very effective way.
And it shows that he's just paying attention.
Yeah.
You know, he's not just going through the motions here. Brilliant.
Awesome. All right, so yeah, we.
Do you want to dive into this?
I do.
Okay.
I'm so curious. I'm just gonna scroll down and see what I said.
Yeah. So this
Because,
is the list that I put together just to give people a background. It was right after Wenel got announced, and you're right. It was right after that, so we didn't do the Invisible Man because we already knew Lee Wenel was doing that. But yeah, I sat down with my editor at Slashfilm. I was kind of like, I want to do something a little fun here. It's not just gonna be me. I'm like, I want to ask all my horror journalist friends, can we do a little fan casting? And like Jacob was so into it, Jacob Hall. So yeah, we put together this little list, and I asked like you, Matt Barone, Ariel Fisher, you know, just going down the list, all people I trust, John Barkan, and yeah. So
I really like my first answer. I'm already really happy with myself.
Okay, so we're starting with Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Okay, your answer.
My answer was Damien Chazelle, and I immediately know why I said that because nobody does the story of the pursuit of genius and perfection quite like he does. And he's a very kinetic filmmaker. He gives his characters such rich internal lives, which Frankenstein definitely needs. But it's definitely that. I haven't read my blurb yet, but that pursuit of perfectionism, of changing the game in your field, I know immediately why I picked him. And also I see my other dream scenario, Michael Shannon as the monster. And you know what? I still stand by that too.
That would be a hell of a Frankenstein.
Right?
It would be very energetic. You're right. That would be a thing. I went with Ben Wheatley.
Nice.
Because I feel like his films deal with classism so well, going like with High Rise and stuff like that. He always has this level of society and the monster going on anyway. So I think that would play really well into it. And also, he's really good at making a monster. You go back and watch things like Kill List and even like Sightseers. He's able to take, I love Sightseers too, but he's able to take these seemingly normal scenarios and just get nasty with them. So I really want to see his Frankenstein.
I like it a lot. And that would be a weird Frankenstein.
It would be so weird, and I'd be so like into it.
Chazelle's would be a lot more classic, like the way La La Land was very much a love letter to the films of those era. But that would be a totally unpredictable Frankenstein.
Yep, that's what I want.
With a third act where I'd be like, what is happening
Chaotic energy. I'm all about that. I don't want to know what I'm about to see.
Absolutely. All right, Bride of Frankenstein, you lead this time.
I am so into Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead doing that because of the way that they are able to deal with emotionality and even romance in horror and still have the ugly beats, but not ignore the fact that there could be some kind of love. And I mean, I know the Bride of Frankenstein film itself isn't really necessarily about romance and love. Yeah. Like, you know, they are monsters.
Well, Invisible Man wasn't about abuse.
Right, exactly. But I think with the way they write narratives and the way they write characters and being given 2 monsters at this point to write about, but also intertwine their lives in a way that gets complicated, I think they would nail that.
I like that a lot. I see that definitely, the spring element there.
Exactly. Just thinking about spring, and even thinking about like the endless, the way they ponder life and the grander things.
Yeah.
It would play so well into these monsters, not knowing who they are or what they represent. And
greenlit. I love it. I really do. I like that a lot. I hadn't thought about like the sort of, in both spring and endless, that interplay between 2 characters who love each other but don't understand each other. That's very smart. You're a pretty smart guy.
Sometimes I can be. What about you?
I picked Karen Kusama, and I'll stand by that too. And I just looked at my blurb. In a recent interview, Karen Kusama said the core theme that unites most of her movie characters is that they ask themselves, "Do I want to be alive right now?" Which is a very good, that's what the Bride's all about. And I see that. I do like the idea of a female filmmaker being on that one. Not that movies should be determined by the gender of the filmmaker.
Agreed.
But I could see the value in that, and the way that I'm sure we're about to speak about the value of maybe having more of a female handprint on I didn't mean to be cute with handprint on invisible.
The invisible.
I made a thing.
The trailer shot that wasn't even in the movie.
Not in the movie.
Brilliant.
But it is a wonderful marketing image, so I get why.
No, it
they did
is, and it's great that they put it in the trailer and not the movie too.
And it's also
You didn't see everything in the trailer.
it was really cute what they did with the hashtag emoji.
Yes.
Where you could only see it in dark mode.
Uh-huh.
Clever. Yeah, I stand by that, and I love Karen Kusama, and I just want her to make as many movies as possible. So how about that? How about that, world?
Yep, no, take it.
More Karen Kusama films. She was in here once, and it was like, just talk all the time.
Just
you genius.
keep speaking.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
let the world know what they should know.
And we have now the Wolfman.
Do you want to go first?
Let's see what I did. Who'd I pick?
Who'd you pick?
Who did I pick? I'm scrolling. Oh, I see it. Yeah, Julia Ducournau.
Going off the raw vibes.
Fleshy.
Yep.
Fleshy features.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep, that's even what I said. Fleshy frights. I gotta be honest. The Wolfman's not my dude. It's not that I don't like it. I just don't have any emotional attachment to it. And there's so many variations on the wolf mythology anyway. The Wolfman mythology.
The Wolfman.
That I don't have a lot of horses in this race. So let's hear your thoughts.
I mean, we already have the best modern Wolfman in Wolf Cop, so I don't know why we'd have to make another one. But the easy answer here is Neil Marshall, not what I picked, because Dog Soldiers is
totally
straight up one of my favorite horror movies ever. I can watch that any day, anytime.
Without question, one of the top werewolf movies.
Absolutely.
And it's shocking how few good werewolf movies there are.
Yeah, no, 100%. But my actual answer was David Bruckner. And I believe that because in The Ritual, he does such good creature work. And I mean, that's kind of what honestly, that's what I'm going on. He's really good at dark, gritty films. He can take that Wolfman and the transformation stuff and really just go all out with it. And I just like his sensibility about it. He hasn't done many films, but his work, like, on Southbound and again, The Ritual and doing all that stuff. I think it would be a very primal Wolfman, and I'm very okay with that.
I think the Wolfman in particular needs a thematic hook because it is based on such a prolific myth throughout, all kinds of societies, and has been so imprinted into our psyche in various film adaptations, most of which aren't very good.
No.
Although I do like the new Wolfman. I think it deserved better than it got. That transformation really needs to mean something.
Yeah.
In the way that, not to pat myself on the back, but in the way that the cannibal transformation and Raw really meant something to that character.
Mm-hmm.
This has to be tied into something, and it's one of the most famous queer allegories is the shedding of the skin and the need to consume something lustfully, but you can't.
Yeah.
Society tells you no, and so you have to do it at night at the dark of the moon. So there's certainly a lot to tap into there, but I would love to be even more surprised by that because that is such a well-known sort of part of that.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of them fail, I think, because a lot of the failure werewolf films are because they just make a beast. Here is a beast,
right.
And that's what it is, and there's nothing else to it. And you're like, well, what am I biting into here?
Yeah.
What am I actually grappling with?
Yeah, it needs some meat on it. Let's say.
Meat on its bones.
Rawr, fleshy.
You're really just sticking with that. Okay,
Yeah.
Phantom of the Opera.
Phantom of the Opera. You go.
Agnieszka Smokczenska.
I just wanted to see you handle it. Nice.
I got it.
Well
I
done.
actually, I forget what movie talk it was, but for 5 minutes, Perry's trying to watch a movie, and I'm just replaying the clip over and over again so I can pronounce it right. I'm I just want to say it right. But yes, the director of The Lore, which is fucking amazing. Fuck that, more than owns. She should be directing Phantom of the Opera because I know we have Phantom of the Paradise already, but her vision for this kind of musical would just be straight Eurotrash and synthy and
fun.
Covered in glitter and really just outrageous.
Yeah.
And that's all I want. She's proven she could do musicals already. She knows she's done a Cannibal Mermaid horror musical.
Yes.
Yeah, hand her Phantom of the Opera and let it be some pop culture riff even and go really nasty. That's what I want.
I think I remember what I chose for this. And
I'll tell you if
think
you're right.
Several people chose it.
Go ahead.
Which is Mike Flanagan.
Yes, you are correct. Anya did it. Anya Stanley, Ariel Fisher.
Oh, I'm in such good company.
And you. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it's just such a freaking melancholic character who's trapped in his trauma, and that is so Mike Flanagan, you know,
Yeah.
and the operatic. I when I think of a lot of Flanagan's work, I think of like draping velvet curtains and
Haunting a Hill House
yes,
right there. Yeah.
and not even just Haunting of Hill House, like
Which one?
just literally came out. Dr. Sleep has
Sleep.
that whole, especially when it goes back to the Overlook, that whole like grandeur, but sort of like decrepit grandeur, right?
Dude, put Rebecca Ferguson in.
Yeah.
I don't even know how. Like, make her the Phantom
Make her a
even.
Phantom.
My God.
I don't care. Just
But
put
it was-
her in anything.
I think this one was really interesting to see everyone's picks because, yeah, there were some Flanagans. Somebody said Nicholas Winding Refn.
That's fun.
Somebody said Luca Guadagnino.
Oh, that's good.
And it was just so funny because this one is so tied to your musical tastes. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's where people were drawn to the director. Like,
Yeah.
what they would do. Like, Luca's Phantom would be so, I think that'd be even more operatic than what Flanagan would do.
Right, that would be very.
Flanagan would be like the mainstream. Like, Luca would be like the theater kid operatic kind of stuff.
That'd be very like Euro.
Yeah.
Like old.
And like
Euro.
Winding Reference would be like a rave or something.
Totally.
Like you're
Just
just
way
on
off
drugs.
base.
You're
Like,
on fucking
Not
drugs.
off base, but way left field. Let's
Right,
say.
exactly.
I don't
Yeah,
play
that-
sports. I got my.
You got it.
course,
You got
that's
it there. You're good. But yeah, that was a really interesting one. So then the next one is Count Dracula.
Dracula. I don't remember. Let's see. What did I do? What did
I'll
I do?
start. Coralie, how do you pronounce
Farge.
Farge, I think? The director of Revenge. Because
Farge?
she has shown that she has no concept of how much blood is in the human body. And that would make for a very entertaining vampire film.
I love that. Did you watch the new Dracula show?
No, I did not. The BBC one?
Yeah.
I did not get to it.
Starts off incredible. Not a fan of where it goes.
That's what
ultimately.
everyone said,
Yes. But that definitely sort of scratched an itch for a certain type of Dracula, which
Okay.
is very carnal and bloody. And,
Okay.
I think you would really enjoy the.
And,
First
but I think
episode.
what Coralie would do, even with it, is go with like a female Dracula immediately. You know, we would get something that is, I mean, she's seen Revenge. Color is so vivid, and it's such a part of the film. And I think this would be a really fun vampire movie to watch.
into it. I chose Jennifer Kent. I understand why I chose that.
Would you change
Because
it?
of her use of shadows and stuff and Babadook. Would I change it? I'm not sure.
Because you just sounded very indecisive. You said, I know why I did.
Having seen Now the Nightingale, which had not come out
Mhm.
yet, I would like to see her pursue more, maybe less straight up horror avenues, because I love the way she embraced that story, which is in some ways a horror story, but in many ways something else. I really like Evangelista's pick of Park Chan-wook. That I would watch the shit.
That was Ariel. Ariel and John both took that one. Yeah, those were.
I'm going to force us to speed up a little bit.
Go. We have one left. Or
Oh.
no, I think.
One. Then we're fine.
All right, Creature of the Black Lagoon.
Yes,
Go.
which is my personal favorite of the classic.
Or I'll
monsters.
start. Fine. Nacho Vigalondo.
Oh, I love that.
The dude does creature work, and he does it with such a sense of. He's very jovial about it all,
yeah,
but it also has a thematic heft. I mean, just watching Colossal.
I love
And-
Colossal. It's one of my favorite movies ever.
I think Nacho's sensibilities would play very well into the whole. His might be a little more the Shape of Water route, where it's not as carnal and primal, and it's more the misunderstood creature from the Black Lagoon who falls in love in this whole kind of arc. But I think it would also be very, very freaking fun.
This is my favorite of the Universal monsters, Creature from the Black Lagoon. I will have a tattoo one day, and I can't wait to see what that looks like.
Awesome.
I chose Nicholas Pesk, who I still stand by, and I think he'd really make quite a stunning looking feature. But actually, as soon as I read this, I remember this very specifically. Someone said Benson and Moorhead, and I was like, nope, that's actually the correct pick. Like, that's
Again,
what I
they
would want to see.
They would do a very
Yeah.
interesting
And
take on it.
again, it ties into what you were saying with the sort of crossed loves who can't quite understand each other. I want to see that. Also, I just think their style would look really stunning in that setting.
Yeah, agreed. Because they did the whole, not ocean vibe, but, doing spring. They had some water sequences that they were okay there. And then the last one was The Mummy.
The Mummy. I love that Benson and Moorhead were picked for like every category.
Also, Issa Lopez. She showed up in, I think, every single
Nice.
one, too, except this one.
Who'd you pick for The Mummy?
I went with Mr. Joe Lynch because
Nice.
the dude makes these, you watch his Wrong Turn, you watch his movies, and they all have an action sensibility.
Yeah.
They're horror, but especially with something like Mayhem, the action takes over and becomes the focal point in a way in a lot of scenes. And The Mummy needs that. The Mummy I like, obviously, is the one with Brendan Fraser, and the adventure is huge, and it's grand, and it's epic. And we haven't really seen Joe Lynch get that kind of pedestal yet. So I think he would be perfect for The Mummy. I think he'd nail that whole adventure-type atmosphere and the way things would go there. And he would just, go for it.
I'm into it. The vibe I was feeling was very, very much the Brendan Fraser Mummy adventure.
Just saw yours, yeah.
Yeah, and so I picked John Krasinski, who at the time was just coming off A Quiet Place, and I think that one of the highlights of his filmmaking in there is the way he handles, he is probably the best Spielberg imitator we've seen in quite a long time. And I'd say that not with disrespect, but that he's clearly learned from a master and knows how to craft an adventure action scene with thrills and horror laced in. And also, I just want to see him and Emily Blunt star in that movie.
I was just going to say, let them star in it. And I'm in for that adventuring architecture team.
Absolutely.
That's great. Let it go.
Into it. Yeah, I stand by that one, too.
Good.
And we're all so smart. How awesome.
I know. We should be producers and writers, or we should be getting paid for this. We should be getting paid for this.
All right. That's it. Your spoiler warning is now. If you have not seen The Invisible Man, get the heck out of here. We're talking spoilers.
Bye.
We're talking all the spoilers. And I
Bye.
mean from top to finish. The ending will be happening. Goodbye. If you have seen it, let's discuss. So this is where I can talk about, more in depth some of my, not concerns, but not even issues. Because I keep going back and forth. I just saw this last night. I'm still really untangling in my mind how I feel a lot about it. But, intimate partner violence is something that I am acquainted with, that has been a big part of my life, and that I have very strong feelings about. And I understand that he's making a monster movie, right? So this man is a monster. But what I don't think translates is that the scariest part about most abusers is that they're not always a monster, is that they are often charming, loving, wonderful people, which is why you stay for so long. And that makes them way scarier than someone who's a straight-up narcissist sociopath, as it's described in the film. Now, a narcissist sociopath can be loving, charming, all these things. That's part of their skill set. But the film never shows that side of him.
I was just going to say, so if we're talking about an Invisible Man that doesn't launch into her story immediately escaping, if we're talking about an Invisible Man that takes the 10 minutes to maybe do some build-up emotional stuff and build up character work where you're seeing him, the nice guy, because we only get the nice guy at the end.
Correct.
That's the only time we see him. And we'll talk about the ending later, but so that you're missing that kind of core element is what you're saying. A little bit, just a little bit.
What I would love to have seen was for them to have gone out to dinner with their friends before the night she leaves. And you see that version of the character. That person might also be that way at home for a while. And you see that, and you see why she would have fallen for him in the first place. But then she does something he doesn't like, and then it changes. And then that night she escapes. That I would have liked to have seen, to have a more holistic view of what it is like to be in that scenario. That said, I think the movie's quite good. I do think that I really meant when I said there's no, the hook of making it The Invisible Man is so inspired, because the feeling of being always watched and surveilled is such a part of that scenario when you're stuck in it. I would literally be on a flight, have a beer, come home 6 hours later, and it would be, why did you drink today? It was known. Everything is so boxed and observed that you always feel watched, to the point that, talking about this now, I feel that feeling, because I know who that person was and that they probably will watch this and that I'm still being observed.
Right.
So that is, brilliant and perfect, and I think that part is what makes the movie soar.
Yeah, and I think what you said before about, we're not even calling them issues, because I agree. When I walked out of The Invisible Man, I was a little more down on it, I guess I would say, than I was the more I thought about it. Because the more I thought about it, that's what I started keying into. What I started keying into is what we saw. And, sometimes people review films and they talk about films. They talk about what they didn't see more than what they saw, and that's an issue because we even fall victim to it a little ourselves. So I finally sat down and started thinking about what I did see. And again, going back to the weaponizing blank space and just going back to these aspects of like, he gets it so right in the sense that the Invisible Man is there just by those audible cues. Just that tease of hearing the mechanical suit, or not even mechanical, the optic suit that he creates. You hear it. Mm-hmm. You know it's there. The character knows it's there. Elizabeth Moss, nobody else believes her. But you get infuriated in a way. As the viewer, you're sitting there going like, I'm seeing this. This is right. And, I'm not seeing it, but we know it's there. And then you think about like reality too. And you think about like the things that we don't perceive in our daily lives that, all right, that audible cue makes it easy in the film to see. But all of a sudden you start thinking about like daily life and like, well, shit. Like there's no audible cues in daily life, but like these things are still there.
I think that I'm leaping off of that a little bit, like in terms of not seeing what is there or not noticing the hints that are there. Mm-hmm. I thought something that was really well done in the film is that Aldous Hodge's character is a good man, by all accounts, a wonderful man, and he still doesn't.
He still fails her
enough to believe what she's saying. And I'm not even one of those people who like says wholesale we should believe all women, we should listen to all women. Mm-hmm. But it's important to note that, like, even the best people may not be able to see the signs that are there. They may not be able to notice the small cues. And it's one of those, like, oh, he's always been great with me, like, that kind of thing. And that's not that character, but I do think, like, the lack of perception of the small giveaways in these scenarios doesn't condemn a person, and I love that they included that in that character in the film, who is a wonderful man, but fails his friend.
The one thing for me, and what I was saying before about not unbelievability, but just kind of the generic beats of the email being sent to the sister and it being this scathing, Elizabeth Moss's character didn't write the email. Yeah. It's quite obvious. She's not even home when it happens. Right. But the email gets sent to her sister, and it's this whole, oh, well, why didn't you tell us to my face? And they're immediately at odds. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of not even pushed back against. Like, Elizabeth Moss doesn't even fight it in a way. Yeah. And again, maybe she's trained not to fight it at this point, and that's part of her character, and I get that. But that was a little, And then the Aldous Hodge point, his character, when he abandons Elizabeth Moss. Yeah. When he leaves her home alone, and that's when the first real attack happens. Before that, his daughter is sitting quite far away. So far away from Elizabeth Moss.
So far.
So to set the scene just so quickly, you have Elizabeth Moss and Storm Reed plays the daughter, right? Okay, so you have Elizabeth Moss and Storm Reed basically on other sides of the room, sitting, talking, and the Invisible Man hits Storm Reed's character. And her immediate reaction is, oh my God, Elizabeth Moss's character hit me, and she starts screaming for her father. And it's like, girl, she wasn't even close. Like, how the jumps in those logic points, that's what I was negatively thrown by. That's the only stuff, because it serves the moment, but it doesn't serve the larger continuity.
That happens also in the ending, which I want to talk about the sister really quick, because holy fuck, what a scene.
Fucking insane.
I haven't heard a vocal reaction like that from a crowd. And again, not a full crowd, but since Hereditary, like when that knife goes in the air and you know what's about to happen, and then it does happen.
And that's what Leigh Whannell does. Oh. He goes against convention. And up until that point, I'm going like, all right, cool. This is just the paranormal riff, blah, 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 blah. Holy fuck. Because Leigh Whannell is going to go for that, and he's going to do that in every movie he does.
Yeah, that was incredible. I will also say that though I agreed that the lead up to it was a bit plot servicey over character servicey, that the sequence within the house with the paint.
Oh, amazing. Incredible. Yeah, no. When she throws the paint and you see the Invisible Man right, like, he's not far. He's close. Right there. And you're like, oh, God, okay.
Yeah,
that got my biggest jump. That got my biggest jump. Ooh. Yeah.
Oh, that was the biggest jump. The biggest holy shit where I literally shouted, holy shit, was the sister. But the biggest jump was by far that he was so close. And that scene is so elegantly orchestrated to make you think she's doing something stupid. You're like, don't put your head there. Don't do that. And everyone, even the people behind me, were shouting, he took away the ladder. Not what happened.
Nope.
Not what happened. I love that Lee Whannell, again, studies the genre, master of the craft, master student of the craft is what I mean to say.
Mm-hmm.
This was in fourth Insidious? Fifth? I don't know. The one where it goes back to Lin Shaye's character's past.
That's 4, right? I think we've only had 4.
We've only had 4. Wow.
I think.
Feels like it's been
time,
a part
right?
of my life.
I was going to say.
So then that would be 4. But the part, spoiler, if you haven't seen it, sorry, it came out like 4 years ago. I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. Time is meaningless. It's an illusion. When she thinks someone's a ghost and they stage it like a total ghost scene, but then the woman reaches out and touches her and it's actually a victim who's been locked up in the basement. That is same sort of thing. He's crafting, and he didn't direct that, but he wrote it.
Yeah.
He's written a scene playing on your expectations of what you know from genre, and then at the last second subverting it to make you jump the fuck out of your seat.
Yeah.
We all thought that ladder was going to be gone. Instead, he was on it, and that's brilliant.
Always there, always watching. And yeah, and the brilliance of the knife scene with the sister, just, you're never safe.
Never.
I mean, the whole point is they go to a public place so they can be like, he can't get us here. And it's like, nah, your abuser's always going to be there in the back of your mind. You're never getting away from it.
That was something I thought, I would say that scene more than anything captured what I loved about the original film, which I just went back and rewatched, and fuck, it holds up. It's so good. But this, he said something like, they can't stop me. I could stand by them and laugh at them. And, you know, the train crash, I think, is the moment in the original film where you finally go like, oh, he can literally do anything. With this power. Mm-hmm. All right.
Ending.
Okay, so when I say I think he made the story point in the ending, I mean the stupid thing with the brother was so unnecessary. Absolutely just makes the film longer than it needs to be. Obfuscates something that should be more of a clear victory, I think. And I don't find that I appreciate what it does to the character, making it that vicious in the end instead of an act of self-defense. That said, this is another point where I had to remind myself, this is a monster movie, and it has also become a revenge movie at this point. That is clearly an act of revenge for what he did to her sister. Fair enough. My story of abuse is not that story of abuse.
Yeah.
No one was murdered, and I probably straight up would murder a motherfucker who killed anyone I love. You know, I get that. That's something different now. And I'm not saying that a film has to, like, play to what I've experienced. But I think that it loses universality there. Then it becomes a different movie. It becomes a revenge film specific to this character and this one experience. And it does, in turn, make her a bit of the monster. Especially since she walks away with the suit.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do agree with that. Yeah, she walks away with the suit. It's acknowledged by both remaining characters what she did.
And it seems to, you know, the way that Aldous Hodge's character looks at her now
has altered. He has a moment.
It's not what I really wanted from this film as, like, a survivor of intimate partner violence was the satisfaction of being heard and seen for who you are. But instead, that's not there. And now he sees her in a scary way. And I think that from what I've read in interviews, he wanted that scene to be like a victory moment. It didn't feel like victory.
It doesn't feel like a full forced victory. I'm going to try something here, though, and tell me if I'm wrong or not. I'm just going to try it. I feel like it doesn't matter whether he was or was not the Invisible Man the whole time at the end of it, because he still has to be held accountable for what happened before that.
Sure.
I think what that final scene is representing is he won't even come clean on what happened previously, and he assumes the nice guy role once again. And it's that role you were talking about not seeing. Maybe it would have been better if we saw it earlier too, but when she comes home, her quote-unquote home to him, he's bought her all this food. He's playing right into her hand in a way of like, listen, everything's going to be different. Don't worry about it. But he won't admit he did anything wrong. He won't admit to anything.
But he does to her. He says, surprise.
He says the surprise line, but could that not be a fake out?
I mean,
it's planted, but to me, it was more. It's the accountability for everything he did, and
that he won't confess.
He won't confess not only to the Invisible Man, but again, he won't confess to the things he doesn't see anything wrong with his actions previously. Yeah. So to me, it's almost more the just general accountability of like, this motherfucker won't even acknowledge what drove me to leave in the first place beyond the Invisible Man stuff. So it's like he did what he did, but he is still on the hook for all of that stuff before, and he did not change. Yeah. He did not change at all. So that's the one thing I could see them going for in that method.
I get it. I also, though, and again, not to make it too personal, but I really do think that what the film initially captures so well is the sense of isolation, of making you question your own reality. And in doing so, you are left with only this one person to tell you what's right and what's wrong, because you can't trust yourself and they've separated you from everyone you ever trusted before. That final act, she no longer has her sister, and now he's terrified of her, so she's now once again isolated.
Alone.
Yeah, he kind of won. And it's very upsetting to me. Like, that's a fucked up little victory for him.
And again, and I mean, that was the victory of the suicide, if it was real. Right. The victory of the suicide was that he's created a scenario where she is still so distraught that maybe she could be creating in his mind whether he's alive or not. Yeah. And it plays into that. Like, it's not really a wholesome victory. And so here's an interesting question. Yeah. She has the suit now. Yeah. Does she do anything with it? Was the point of that to now go on a spree of her own against promising young woman style and stuff like that? Right? Like, that's the thing. Have you created her?
Does she become a monster in her own right? Has he himself made a new monster of sorts? I don't know. I hope not. It seems like.
I mean, like, that's what it seems like. That's the tone it sets. Yeah. And so, I mean, again, the ending to me is it's purposely ambiguous. It wants people to have these conversations, and maybe that's why it's there. Yeah. Maybe it's done this method because abuse itself is messy, and getting over it and things of that nature. Obviously, everything that you just said. And I don't know if there is a clear-cut way for any one person. And maybe that's what he's trying to show. And
I don't know. I don't hate the ending. And
no, me either. Again, like, we're talking about a movie we like. Like, we're talking about a movie we both enjoyed.
It's a film that up to that point really had me there with it, and then lost me at the last second in a way that I don't know was intentional. But or maybe it was. Maybe he wanted that character to have a victory in the end. I don't think so, though. I think she was supposed to be the victor. And I just, it's just a tone I'm not in love with for ending that film. Yeah. I do think that the answer to, like, your question, what happens next, fundamentally depends on the box office, like whether we're going to get an answer to that. If it's huge, I think we'll find out. But as it exists in our minds, I don't know. I mean, like, my hope is that she takes that thing and fucking burns it to dust, because that's how you win. That's how you escape, is you don't play. Why would you take something created by the person who ruined your life and then go destroy with it?
I think she would have done that already. I think that would have been the final showing in The Invisible Man if she was going to do that. Right. That would have been the power move.
I agree.
That would have been the full power move that maybe even brings some of the victory back to her. Yeah. I think her taking it and walking away with it and ending on that shot of her face.
Yeah, it says things.
Is this the crossover now with new Universal Monsters come out that they might have to stop her from killing or something?
That's interesting.
I don't know.
That's interesting. Thematically questionable, but interesting.
100% it is.
But no, also, right, like, abusers create abusers, right? Like, that's a known thing in psychology. The people who abuse the most were probably hurt a lot as kids. So it's interesting. Very interesting.
Choices were made. Choices were made.
I'm not in love with the ending, but I do like the film a whole lot. I just also want to say thank you for not killing the dog.
Oh my God.
I was so worried about that good boy.
Yes, agreed. Dog is fine.
The dog is fine?
The dog is fine.
I'm glad that they had a little shot of him walking out before her.
Yep.
Little Zeusy boy getting away.
Good boy got away.
Yeah.
All that mattered.
Oh, I was worried about that dog.
We went, I wouldn't do that. He wouldn't
never
do that.
know.
He would never do that.
Yeah, that's a total side note, but I just had to get that. I was thinking about the final shots, and I was like, oh, yeah, Zeus ran away. Yay.
That's a Perry moment of like, don't worry, the dog is alive.
Yeah.
Like, guys, it's fine.
I was concerned. Anything else you wanted to say about Invisible Man?
No, I think we covered everything pretty substantially.
Yeah, pretty good stuff. I do want to say before we log off, just because we did touch on some heavy stuff, if you or anyone you know is stuck in an intimate partner violence scenario, get help, talk to someone. Isolation, again, is the key. Find your way out of that isolation if you can. Talk to a professional, talk to a friend, talk to a helpline if that's all you can do. Make a plan to leave. Those things don't tend to get better. If you need somewhere to call, you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is 800-799-SAFE. And take care of yourself, because that person isn't looking out for you, so you're going to need to do it for yourself. And again, talk to someone. Isolation, it's very bad. Find someone, talk to them. Don't steal the suit and go kill a bunch of people. That's
Probably
not
don't.
the way forward.
Probably don't.
Do that.
Don't do that. Bad.
Go get a good Zeus.
Oh, I'll get a good boy.
Yeah.
Just live happily with a good boy.
Sorry to end it heavy, but we did talk about heavy stuff, so I wanted to put those resources
Thematic. It's
out
needed.
there.
It's needed.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having
It
me
was
again.
a pleasure.
Always is.
This was lots of fun. Thank you for putting together that list. That was a lot of fun to reread through again.
It's interesting, yeah, just to think about how it might even change, or,
Yeah.
how that would alter.
I mean, like, you could tell some of my feelings changed a little bit
I could hear it in your voice.
over the
The
course
inflection
of a
was
year.
Yeah, because as these new filmmakers come out of nowhere and start to impress us, it goes like, oh, but you.
Yeah. Oh, this was something, before we wrap really quick, sort of side tangent. It's my show. What's
Cool.
up? Rose Glass, now that I've seen Saint Maud, I was like, what would she be?
Oh, trying to place her into something?
Yeah.
She needs to be, I mean, God, keep with the puritanical stuff and keep with the religious stuff. I mean, that was, yeah.
We can't talk about that yet, I
Nope.
don't think. Well, I mean, my review's online.
I have my socials on. I was going to say, yeah, like, you can, but.
But, yeah, I would love to see her get a bigger project is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think she's on her way to doing that.
To jump on what you were saying about how, like, new voices will come out and you will want new things. I want her to have a bigger film with a budget, because she's got an eye, like Mr. Winnow. Not similar, but
No, not similar at all.
I see Saint Maud, and in the same way that when I watch Invisible Man, I go, that's an eye that's singular.
Yeah, agreed on that.
So yes, thank you again. Thank you for watching. Where can everyone find you? Read your work.
At Donato Bomb on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, and my work appears regularly on sites like /film, Bloody Disgusting, and just follow me on social, and I'll whore myself out.
I'm trying to get them on Collider more.
I would love to if I could find the time in the day between my day job and my
Yeah.
freelance opportunities.
I've never given my letterbox before. I'm inspired. I'm like, what is it?
It's just
find out.
this is a fun way to. I never used to, and all of a sudden I started using it more, and people are engaging with it more. So I'm like, maybe this letterbox thing ain't this thing the kids are using these days.
It's pretty fun. I was just using it as a tracking thing.
Yeah.
But it is a fun social media
Agreed.
platform. Yeah, so if you want, you can find me on Twitter at Haley Fouch, also Haley Fouch on Letterboxd, and Haystack McGroovy on Instagram. And you have officially survived the witching hour.